Welcome to the Mayor of Money podcast with former Burlington Mayor Rick Goldring of Goldring Financial Leadership. In this podcast, we provide successful business owners, including doctors and dentists, with insights to minimize tax and risk while maximizing retirement income and future legacy. Join us for this journey as Rick draws from years of experience and guest experts, including successful entrepreneurs, to provide unique strategies and approaches to estate and financial planning matters, as well as business in general. Now, on to the show.
I am thrilled today to have with me Paul Silva, who's a lawyer with the firm of Rinaldi Silva in Burlington. And Paul, congratulations. I was looking at your bio on your website. You've been a lawyer for 20 years. Congratulations.
Thanks, Rick.
You focus on a number of different areas of the law. Before I press the record button, we were talking about real estate and something that surprised me to hear. But in positioning what you're going to talk about, there are many people that get flyers in the mailbox from somebody that says, "We'll buy your house cash." And that is often not the best approach to take when selling your property. Can you enlighten us with regard to what you told me earlier with regard to what's known as assignments?
Yeah, thanks, Rick. First off, thanks for having me on the show. I appreciate it. I've always admired your, I admired you when you were a mayor, and I've had great fortune of being able to chat about your new business, and excited to be on your podcast. So thanks for the opportunity.
You're most welcome.
Yeah, what's happened with this hot real estate market recently is that there are, unfortunately, there are people that are sometimes in a bad financial situation, and there are purchasers out there that are looking for to offer, I guess, some assistance to those people by way of a quick closing on their home. So what will happen is they'll put a flyer in somebody's mailbox and they'll say, if you want to sell your house quickly without having to deal with realtors coming in and viewings of your property and getting it all cleaned up and ready for the market, we'll buy it from you for cash, because we buy houses for cash, which sounds like a great concept. And for someone, for example, who's in financial distress, it may very well be a very appealing proposition. Sometimes homes are not maintained because the person can't afford the home anymore, and they really just don't see they don't see the ability to put money into it to get it ready for top dollar on the market. And often these cash buyer purchasers are looking for exactly that, properties that are owned by someone who is probably in financial distress and that needs repair. The house needs repair. So they see it as an opportunity to buy something for less than probably it would be worth if it was ready for market. Okay, so the agreement, the flyer will say contact us. So the person will contact whoever's the contact information in the flyer. And often what will happen is they don't seek any advice from either a lawyer or a realtor, and they'll enter into negotiating a deal with a party that's looking to buy it. A lot of times far more sophisticated than the homeowner. And it often isn't that great of a deal. It seems like it on the front end, but the person may not realize the house is worth, or the property is worth, a lot more than what's being offered. And really the best advice I can give anybody in that circumstance is it's fine to discuss things, but you should get advice before you sign the contract from a lawyer, a real estate lawyer. And also, if you want to know the market value of your property, there's no one better to ask than a realtor to give you some form of an understanding of the actual market value.
It's been a crazy market these days in real estate, certainly since COVID hit. It was doing well before as far as the home prices, if you owned a home, but home prices have cranked right up during COVID. So as a result, when people go into, they're bidding against other people. But ideally, should they not contact their lawyer before they go down the path of buying a property?
They should contact their lawyer, and they really should have their lawyer review any contract that they're looking to get into, so that they can better understand it, and also work with a realtor to make sure that they're signing good contracts that have proper clauses. One of the challenges that purchasers, for example, who are trying to get into the market for the first time, or are looking to change homes, many people are finding the challenge being that they can't put a condition in for home inspection or financing, and so that they're walking into purchases with their hands tied to some extent, because it's really a vendor's market. And sometimes in the heat of negotiating and putting in the best offer you can put in, they overlook certain things, and then later on they have buyer's remorse and they say, geez, I wish I'd had a home inspector and I probably would have caught these problems with the house. But they don't, because if they put a home inspection clause in, they probably won't get the property. But hindsight's always 20/20, right? So that's the problem. Down the road, they say, geez, I wish I hadn't seen those things, because A, I overpaid, and B, I bought a property with problems. So better to get that advice on the front end before you sign the contract. Absolutely.
But some people are fortunate. They have family members that are good about understanding, looking at the structure of a home. They have friends. But for those that aren't blessed with a family member or a friend, there are home inspectors, and I guess you could hire one to go on every house you take a look at before you purchase.
That's right. There are home inspectors that will do those things, and some vendors will actually do a pre-home inspection, a vendor's home inspection beforehand, and they'll give a copy of the report. I wouldn't necessarily rely on that per se. You're better to, like you say, if you have a family member or friend, bring them along, or pay somebody to come with you if they're more familiar with the building code requirements, because they'll probably more quickly spot a problem that maybe you didn't.
Now, Paul, with regard to COVID, and the government's had to make quick decisions about a lot of different things, but they made a quick decision with regard to signing real estate documents, or signing legal documents for that matter. And in my business, the same. I'm staggered how much we can do via DocuSign, and you're in the same position.
That's right. Things have changed drastically since COVID. I think to a large extent for the better for the consumers out there, because in pre-COVID times, real estate lawyers couldn't sign documents electronically. We had to, or at least that wasn't the standard. The standard was you met with a client in person and signed all the documents, verified the identity, and everything was signed with pen on paper. With COVID having posed a lot of challenges with people getting out of their houses and going to offices, the government allowed a relaxation of the rules. And when I say the government, I mean the province, allowed a relaxation of the rules. So we can now sign documents with clients via video. So much like we're doing today, we're having a Zoom call. We can do a Zoom call with a client as long as they've satisfied us that they are in fact who they purport to be. So they have to send us their ID in advance, and then during the video, they show their ID as if they were showing it to us in person. Obviously, there's a reason why the government, or in general, the industry doesn't want, there's been issues with fraud in the past, and so lawyers are sort of a goaltender, if you will, on that. I mean, we do act to try and stop frauds on this, in the sense that we're verifying people's IDs. But they've found a way around that, which is intended to facilitate things for purchasers and people who are refinancing or selling their property. And the video is now commonly used for that.
Now, Paul, do you have to keep those video meetings to refer to if required?
It's not a requirement, although it's a recommendation. So I will record every meeting and store it, just so I have a record of verifying somebody's ID.
Right.
But I do have to ask consent of the person prior to. So there are some challenges there.
I get it, but you figure out a way to work around it, I guess, somehow.
Well, and I think it's helped people too, Rick, because there's some people that have mobility issues, or
Right.
elderly people, for example, that really don't want to be displaced, and it really helps with certain people. I mean, it really gives them an opportunity to, or maybe they're away they're out of province, working abroad somewhere, not necessarily out of country, but they can sign by video. So it really does help.
So there have been some improvements in the way we do business, I would suggest, through COVID. Up until COVID, I'd never signed anybody up for insurance, for life insurance, via the internet. But now it's very common, and I'd rather do it that way than any other way because it's much more streamlined. Can be a little choppy sometimes inputting the information, but once it gets through the system, it's controlled very well and managed very well. And the process is much smoother than it was before with pure paper. Now, one of the legal documents that you get involved with that everybody should have, or virtually everybody should have, anybody the age of majority, I would suggest, or most people, is the will, as well as powers of attorney. And I know that talking to somebody last week in their 30s, 5 kids, and as far as I know, he told me they don't have a will. That presents lots of challenges for the family if someone dies, what's called intestate. Can you enlighten us on those challenges?
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things we recommend to clients whenever they come in is to make sure that they've got their wills and estate plan updated. And the reason for that is because if somebody dies intestate, as you say, what it means is that there isn't a person who's legally able to deal with their financial affairs after they've passed. And of course, they're not here to speak on their own behalf. And if they haven't appointed somebody, then there really is a bit of a chaotic situation that will arise, meaning that who is going to be that person if they haven't designated them in a will? And so then when the people that are left have to figure out who's going to apply to the court for that legal authorization. And that's called an application for a certificate of appointment of a state trustee without a will. In some cases, the assets of the deceased are jointly owned with another party, perhaps a spouse. So some of those things may be less concerning, but certainly if a person has left behind bank accounts or an ongoing business, if there isn't anybody legally appointed by way of a legal will, then somebody has to step up and ask for the court to appoint them. And it may not always be clear. There could be there could be 2 or 3 parties that believe they're the right person to be appointed. So you could have 2 or 3 parties that are presenting themselves as the right person, and then the court has to decide. So of course, if the deceased decided, it would be their wish. It wouldn't necessarily be other people deciding for them. But and of course, there's a cost involved in that. I mean, if somebody has to apply to the court to be appointed, and there is a contest, we're talking thousands of dollars in legal fees. None of this is contemplated, obviously, by the person who's died. They don't want to leave that mess for their family or friends or business partners. They want to leave things organized, but they haven't. So that's why having the will and the estate plan taken care of prior to any unexpected passing away is the best option. It leaves things organized. And of course, when we meet with clients to do wills and powers of attorney, we also talk about life insurance because, you want to leave your family taken care of and your dependents. So of course, part of doing a will and an estate plan involves making sure you've got life insurance in place and you've got the right beneficiary designations and your investments have the right beneficiary designations. So these are all discussions we have with the person who's planning their estate and taking care of that, leaving that organized. Unfortunately, I had a call today from someone who had told me that a client of mine died unexpectedly over the weekend. And they're trying to see if any will was left in place. And I have a feeling that there isn't one. It's going to cause real chaos. It's going to be very difficult for the business partner and the family. It's going to be very difficult. And at a time when their mourning is passing, they're also saying, what are we going to do about all these financial issues that have been left? Hopefully he did attend to it.
Yeah, hopefully. Unfortunately, there's too many stories of some very, very successful people and very prominent people And there's a long list. If you Google it to see who are celebrities that died without a will, you'd be surprised. Bobby Kennedy, he had a will, but he hadn't changed his executor. His executor was his brother, of course, who died in 1963, and Bobby Kennedy died in 1968. So after his brother was tragically assassinated in Dallas in 1963, Bobby Kennedy didn't change his will, didn't review it. So that's a major example. You know, he had a will, but he named his brother as executor who had already passed away. So.
Well, and you also have situations, you're making me think of situations where a couple may have, they each have a will they've done, and then they subsequently separate.
Right.
Divorce, and never actually attend to making a new will. That happens a fair bit as well. Or they don't change their life insurance designation, beneficiary designation, when they really intended to. So it's really about taking care of your affairs and having things updated as life changes occur as well.
And Paul, 30 years ago, we didn't worry about passwords for bank accounts and different applications that we use online and different accounts we have and subscriptions and so on and so forth. We didn't worry about that, but we all have significantly or some complication for most of us with our applications that we use online, whether it be bank accounts, whether it be subscriptions, investments. There's a long list of things that often you can only get access to online. Have you seen any challenges with that particular aspect of it?
Absolutely. I mean, there's countless cases of people that die unexpectedly, and their social media accounts remain not updated. Nobody can access them. I mean, the problem you run into, though, Rick, is that the passwords often change. You know, you might have to reset your password every number of months or years or whatever it is, and sometimes the password that's marked down, if you're lucky, may not even be the most updated one. But the key thing, I think, the takeaway here is that there's a discussion that's had by the person who's planning things, and they leave somebody with as much recent information as possible, including a will that's been prepared, signed, not half complete, but actually completed, and power of attorneys. You know, power of attorneys are named. You mentioned that earlier in the original question. Power of attorneys are, and people often confuse these things, Rick. People confuse power of attorneys and wills. They think that they're essentially the same, and they're not. A power of attorney is used when a person is alive but unable to make decisions for themselves. In most cases, that's if the person's incapacitated, whether they've had, you know, they're in hospital, or whether they've, whatever their situation is, they're alive, their heart's still beating, still have a pulse, but they can't make decisions. And so they appoint one or two persons, people, or multiple people to deal with their financial affairs and health decisions. And they're in two separate documents. And it's only once the person's died that the will comes into play. Right. So it's a three-part approach, if you will. There's three legal documents for someone's basic estate planning. And if you have a business, you can add another layer of complexity there, which is you might want to do a will for a corporation that you have, or multiple corporations. You do a separate will so that you can plan for the assets through the corporation or corporations. If you don't have a corporation, it's nothing. There's nothing to be worried about there. But if you do, it's something to consider, and those would be corporate wills.
And that fits into shareholders agreements, which you design when there's more than one owner of a company.
Right. That's right. When you have a company and there are shareholders, more than one, as you say, there should be an agreement that's created which deals with a number of issues, including if one of the shareholders was to die, what happens to the shares of that shareholder? Where do they go? And as you know, because you deal with this, Rick, life insurance policies can be obtained in order to fund the buying out of those shares if someone unexpectedly died, or if they just wanted to get out of the business. We're not, it doesn't have to be that the person died. It could be that they want out of the corporation and
Right.
they want to be bought out. There are clauses that can be put in a shareholder agreement to trigger the sale. And if it was to be that someone passed away, the life insurance could kick in to purchase those shares on behalf of the estate, or to buy out, to be bought out, if you will.
I guess the question, for people that I review with people when in that situation, if you need money upon your passing, where is it going to come from? Well, there's really 4 sources, and one is cash. And if you're dealing in millions of dollars, obviously, a lot of the time people don't have the cash around to pay off taxes or to buy out the estate of the deceased shareholder. You could borrow money, but of course you got to pay it back, and that can put a strain on the business. You can sell an asset, but typically you don't want to do that necessarily. And the 4th thing is you can use life insurance, which is an elegantly simple tool that you pay a premium for, and that if you check out, then money comes in to the rescue and helps deal with liquidity issues, helps look after the family, and helps provide some money for your estate to be bought out, and your partner to continue in business if that's what the plan should be.
It's funny because I've always been, I shouldn't say always, I used to be someone who questioned life insurance, but as my experience level with real estate and wills and the legal world has increased, I've realized the value of insurance and what it can offer people in terms of a solution, that there really aren't many other solutions available in some cases to make sure that the people left behind are taken care of.
Yeah, it's elegantly simple. The money's parked there in escrow on standby, that if you should pass away, the money's there. It's completely liquid, and it's paid out under the vast majority of circumstances completely tax-free.
Yeah.
And you pay a small percentage of that face amount of the insurance every year to have that money sitting there in escrow.
That's right.
Well, Mr. Silva, this has been great. Thank you very much for taking time. There's a good discussion that we got out of this, and I think certainly in this hot market, people need to make sure that they don't do anything that they regret with regard to taking advantage of something that may be too good to be true. And that's when somebody comes offering you cash for your house. You really want to be suspicious of that and check with a realtor or check with a lawyer or check with both before you go down that path. And of course, you did talk about the importance of having wills and powers of attorney and shareholders agreements, and having a corporate will in the case of people that own businesses, as well as a regular will. So this has been a great discussion, Paul. Thank you very, very much. Paul Silva is with Rinaldi Silva, a law firm here in Burlington. Paul, thank you very much. And I want to thank everyone for tuning in and listening or watching the Mayor of Money podcast series with Paul Silva. I'm Rick Goldring. We'll see you next time on the Mayor of Money. And remember to stay positive and test negative.
Thank you for listening to the Mayor of Money podcast. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. If you'd like to have a one-on-one discussion with Rick or have an idea for a particular guest or topic, contact him at rick@rickgoldring.com. See you next time on the Mayor of Money podcast.